USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veteran stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
My name's Tom Holcomb, or Thomas Holcomb. My dad was in the Air Force, so I was a brat. Growing up, my dad flew B-52s. My brother was a flight instructor in T-38s, and I figured I would fly, real equipment like that. I didn't have my bachelor's degree at the time, and the only people who would let me fly was the Army.
One of the main sources of trained copter pilots is the Army's Warrant Officer Candidate Program. Those who qualify enlist especially for copter training, and if they make it, they graduate both as warrant officers and as qualified pilots.
Everybody who graduated from flight school before they got their commission. After I graduated from flight school, they had a secondary training called the AMED course, and the AMED course helped pilots understand the limitations of the human body and what we needed to do to keep guys alive, but that wasn't the technical flying part at all. You didn't find out what a combat approach was until you got to Vietnam. When I went into country, everybody was going through what was called the 90th replacement. You land in Saigon, and they would put you in this environment waiting for your orders to go to the specific unit you were going to be serving with. In my case, it took almost a week to get my orders, but once I got assigned to the 571st Medical Detachment in Da Nang, then I could get orders to fly up to Da Nang, and I did. We were pretty much autonomous. Dustoff units could set up a field site where I might go to Phu for a week, a couple of cases of sea rations, and we're living next to the Prick 25, and if they have a mission, they call us. Normally, what would happen is you have a 12-hour shift where you're called first up. So the first thing you do in the morning is pre-flight the aircraft and be ready to fly a mission. And then you wait for the mission to come in. Right there with a helicopter, trying to get off the ground within a couple of minutes if the call comes in that there's a mission.
When an air ambulance is called in by the medic at the casualty site, it comes with enough equipment to provide immediate first aid, resuscitation, and stabilization. Litters and blankets, splint sets, tourniquets and dressings, an airway tube, Dextran and morphine are all on board. A portable resuscitator is also available to the aid man.
I made a point of not talking a lot about, war stories. I have lots of missions that I flew. I can just pick one out, I guess. At the time, I was flying a field site out of Phu, which is north of Da Nang, towards the Quang Tri and the DMZ. So we went out there, and they had a hunter-killer team that was working the area, and that's when you have a loach down low and a cobra up high. The loach gets them to make a noise and then calls in the cobra to take them out. And unfortunately, what happened is they shot down the loach, and it went down right on top of the VC. And we snuck in, and we couldn't land, but we could put the hoist down. So we sent the medic down, brought both the pilot and the crew chief on board our helicopter, and then we brought the medic back up on the jungle penetrator, and the medic got Silver Star for that. But our whole idea was to get in and get out. The only configuration we flew in Vietnam with a Huey was set up for 3 litter and 4 ambulatory. The litter was 2 boards with a wrap of canvas around it. The crew chief and the medic would help put the patient on board, and if it was a really insecure LZ, we may not hang the litter from the straps that come down from the ceiling. We would just put them on the deck because it's faster that way to get out of there. And by the way, we did have 2 medics involved. We had the medic that was a really, really good medic, and then we cross-trained all of the crew chiefs to be medics. Where you go depends on where you are physically, where you're closest, because you want to get them out of the helicopter as fast as you can as well, and onto a surgical table, so that they can get fixed. If it's out of Fubai, we had a surgical med-surg hospital in Fubai. If it was down in Da Nang, it would be Da Nang. This is the Hai Van Pass, and that's in between Da Nang and Fubai. And it's really pretty to look at, but you don't want to go down there. And then this is a picture of me in front of the Screaming Nighthawk. And here's the Prick 25 over here on the side, and you can tell you got a mission coming when the Prick 25 goes off. And all of our missions when I was in Vietnam were with a hotel modeled Huey. Hotel modeled Huey was fairly standard except for the lift. And we had an electric lift that would allow us to send a jungle penetrator or a litter down to the ground if we couldn't land, and we could hoist the patient up with that lift. Other Hueys didn't have those. We did, and we used them very, very effectively. A hoist can be hairy, but it was an effective way to work. What we would do is point our tail at wherever the bad guys were, because it could, maybe they shoot at us and it ricochets off, It was a good procedure. The other one is you want to get down into the trees, but not into anything heavy, because you're kind of a sitting target when it comes to a hoist. Once you start hoisting somebody up, you can't move. There is a kill switch where you can blow the hoist, but you wouldn't want to do that unless you absolutely had to, and I never did. I don't know how many missions I flew. There were some guys that recorded each mission. I didn't do that. You could fly 10 missions in one day, or you could fly none. We were at the end of the war, and that made it really kind of awkward, because there were a lot of troops that were thinking, I don't want to be the last one to die. There were just lots of missions, and we were really glad to get the call, because that's why we were there. I don't know, can you see this? Anyway, it's a picture of Sheila when she was in Vietnam. Her mom had sent her a cake, and by golly, it didn't get crushed, and it got to Vietnam, and for her birthday, she got to eat it. I had taken a transfer to Long Binh Dustoff from Da Nang, and I had some friends from the 571st, and then they came by and picked up me, and we went into the 3rd Field Hospital to have a good time and have a couple of drinks at 15 cents a drink, I had met Sheila that night, and it was fun, and I asked her out, and she said she would go out to dinner with me. The nurses at that point were running either 12-hour shifts or double shifts. So I get there to pick up Sheila, and I knock on the door, and there's no answer. And I knock on the door again, and she comes to the door. Well, she's been asleep. It got quiet, and so she had a chance to take a nap. But anyway, we went out and had a great dinner. There were some really nice restaurants, and we had some great meals. Most of them French at Le Cave. And anybody who ever went to Le Cave could tell you that it was a first-class French restaurant. And it beat the heck out of eating sea rations. You get just under a year. So what happened is I got to spend Thanksgiving with my folks, and then 2 days later I shipped out. Well, when I came back, I got like a week or 10-day drop or 2-week drop. So I got home just before Thanksgiving. Well, Sheila did it in November. She got to stay home for Christmas, and then they shipped her, and she got to come back in time for Christmas. When I came back, I was reassigned to Fort Lewis. I had her to help me. I had a lot of the troops that I flew with in Vietnam were at Fort Lewis right next to me, and they were really supportive as well. It would have been really difficult, I think, to come back from Vietnam, and then the next day you're out of the service and in the middle of a whole different world without those structures and supports around you. And I was grateful for the support that I had. The proudest point would be probably flying MAST back in the States. Military assistance for the safety of traffic. Based out of Fort Lewis, but we also had a field site that we maintained most of the time out at the Yakima firing range, and that's in eastern Washington. From Fort Lewis, we would go up to the top of Mount Rainier and pick up that hiker that broke his leg. We would go out in the middle of the Olympic forest and pick up that head-on automobile accident where the guy's hurt real bad, and rather than wait for an ambulance to get out there to him, we could get him in and smoothly get him out. We had a field site at Yakima, and we went over and picked up a 2-pound premature baby, and I didn't know that they could live at 2 pounds. Smallest baby I'd ever seen. We put the incubator in there, had a nurse in there with our crew, and took them to Children's Hospital in Seattle, and they made the trip. We never charged to pick up people, and other people wanted to charge. And so that's why the Army canceled the MAST program eventually. Now, this is the standard Army issue helicopter helmet, and it's supposed to protect your hearing so that you can hear after you've been flying for a number of years. We also wore earplugs with it.
Is that the one you had in Vietnam? Or?
Absolutely. That's the one I had in Vietnam.
They didn't want it after you left, huh?
No, they didn't want it anymore. A lot of us were really put off by the organizations that veterans had joined from World War II and Korea. They didn't seem to think that Vietnam was much of a war. In fact, it wasn't a war, they said. I remember talking to World War II vets, and after a couple of drinks, talking to them, sometimes they cried. And I didn't understand why they couldn't control that, because you're not supposed to cry. But at 74, I think that PTSD is a lot of different things, but that's one of them. It's an emotional experience that you just can't deal with anymore. I think if I could, what they need to do, letting the other veterans know that they're not alone and there's people that care about them that will help them.